Hi everybody, we are delighted to be with you after this summer break for a new webinar on Islamic finance. Stay with us because sometime I will speak in French, sometime I will speak in English. Restez avec nous, bienvenue, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Donc restez avec nous jusqu'à la fin. Des fois je vais parler en anglais, des fois je vais parler en français. On a une audience double. We have from English-speaking countries and other from French-speaking countries. Pour les francophones, restez avec nous jusqu'à la fin. Je vais d'abord commencer à parler en anglais et puis ensuite je traduirai en français. I will first start to speak in English and I will translate into French. First of all, on behalf of IFAAS, I warmly thank Financial Sector Deepening Africa, FSDA, and UK Aid for their trust in this initiative. Also, we thank the participants who are many to follow us from different countries in Africa, but also outside Africa. I have seen in the list people from USA, people from Luxembourg, people from France, and from Canada, etc. It's very interesting and we are happy to have you with us. Nous avons une audience très diversifiée du continent africain, mais aussi en dehors du continent africain. Donc nous sommes très heureux de vous avoir avec nous. We are together for about 1 hour, maybe a little bit more, 75 minutes maximum, 20 minutes maximum, to hear and learn from our guest speaker that I will introduce in a few minutes, and to explore Islamic finance as a potential growth engine for African economies. Observers and analysts that you are, you know that despite having great potential in the continent, the Islamic finance industry in Africa remains, for the moment, relatively underdeveloped, where its share of the industry's total asset is around 1%, in spite of Africa being home to 27%, almost 27% of the world's Muslim population. FSDA and IFAAS have decided to organize this webinar after the publication of the Islamic Finance toolkit that have been prepared for the benefits of stakeholders of financial industry, including the policymakers and the authorities of African governments, amongst others. It will be possible for you to download this Islamic Finance toolkit. We will share with you the link or the QR code to download it directly from the website, from the FSDA website. And of course, we'll come back to this publication in a few moments with the speakers. The main objective of the webinars, this webinar, are to create first awareness on the Islamic Finance Toolkit, to underline the importance of Islamic finance in Africa, and to create awareness of the challenges faced and provide a possible solution to implement Islamic finance in the African continent. Then our agenda will be the following. First, before giving the floor to the speakers, I will quickly introduce them, myself first, and Evans and Farouk. After that, we will address the different topics and we'll discuss the potential, the challenges, and the recommendation on how we can contribute together to the development and the growth of the Islamic finance industry in Africa. In a first session with Evans Osano, Capital Markets Director at FSDA, he is going to present first FSDA and its important role in African financial market, and FSDA stands on Islamic finance and the purpose of this Islamic finance toolkit. Evans will also talk about the Kenyan experience and how and whom FSDA can help. In the second session, I will give the floor to Farouk Raza, the founders and the CEO of IFAAS Group. Our company, IFAAS, is involved in the development of the Islamic finance industry in Africa, but also in other continents. Farouk will talk about the IFAAS role in this development in Islamic finance markets in Africa. And he will talk about some example of Kenya, Ethiopia, West and North African experience. And he will also talk about the Islamic finance ecosystem and its development in Africa. At the end of each session, I will summarize and translate very quickly into French the main points, and I will also look to the question from the audience. Then You are invited as participant to submit your question through the Q&A pop-up that you have on your screen. You just have to click on the Q&A icons that you have on Zoom, and you can submit any question that you have for Evans, for me, or for Farouk. When Evans and Farouk will be speaking, I will look to the relevant question and I will ask them to answer. It's better indeed to have kind of interaction between the speaker and the audience. It's better than to wait the end of the webinar to answer to all the questions. Of course, at the end of the webinar, we will continue to answer to the question. You can submit your question in French or in English. My main challenge as moderator is to optimize and to manage the timing of this webinar. If we have enough time, I will try to translate the question from English to French or from French to English. But if we don't have enough time at the end of the webinar, I will ask Farouk and Evans to reply directly in the same language of the question, because Farouk is also Francophone. For Evans, if it's required, we will do our best to translate very quickly the questions for him. Then let's go. I am Bouker Ajdir. I will moderate this webinar. Very quickly about me, since 2008, I'm partner at IFAAS, and from our French office that is based in Paris, I'm spearheading all our projects in the French-speaking countries across Europe and Africa, North, Central and West Africa. Especially during the last 7 years, I have been involved in many Islamic finance regulatory framework projects. For example, recently we have worked for the Central Bank of Morocco, Bank Al Maghrib. 2 years ago, we have worked for the BCAO, Central Bank of West African countries. 5 years ago, I have worked for the Central Bank of Mauritania. And recently, also, I have worked for the Ministry of Finance of Morocco. In parallel, I also led many projects of setting up Sharia compliant investment fund, sukuk issuance, and few Islamic Windows projects within conventional banks. I will give the floor today to Evans Osano. Evans has over 20 years of global experience in investments, financial markets, and development finance. This spans Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East, but also North Africa, North America, Europe, and South Asia, covering over 30 countries. Evans, do not hesitate to complete your presentation if I missed any point. At FSDA, Evans leads the capital markets development initiatives across Sub-Saharan Africa. This include green bonds markets and market infrastructure development. About Farouk Raza, our CEO of IFAAS Group. Farouk holds an MBA in strategic management, and he brings on board exceptionally rich experiences across various sectors of the Islamic finance industry. He has been playing a leading role in the development and growth of Islamic finance internationally, where he led and managed a groundbreaking high-profile project at policy level with governments, central banks, and regulatory authorities. Very quickly, before to give the floor to Evans for the beginning of the first session, I will translate this introduction. Bienvenue à toutes et à tous. Comme je le disais à l'instant en anglais, on est ensemble pour à peu près une petite heure, 1h15, 1h20 maximum, où nous allons parler donc de la finance islamique et de son développement sur le continent africain. Ce webinaire fait suite à la publication pas un rapport, mais de ce qu'on a appelé la boîte à outils de la finance islamique, qui est un document que nous avons travaillé avec FSDA, qui va être présenté dans quelques instants, que vous pouvez télécharger sur le site internet. On va vous partager tout à l'heure les différents liens pour pouvoir le télécharger, ce qu'on a appelé la boîte à outils de la finance islamique. Comme vous le savez, vous qui êtes des observateurs et des spécialistes, le potentiel de la finance islamique en Afrique est véritablement sous-exploité. Lorsqu'on voit qu'à peine 1% des actifs totaux de la finance islamique sont sur le continent africain, alors que le continent africain héberge près de 27% de la population mondiale. On se rend compte véritablement que le potentiel de la finance islamique en Afrique est vraiment sous-exploité. C'est pour cette raison que nous avons travaillé avec FSDA dans cette dynamique pour faire ce premier document que nous avons appelé la boîte à outils de la finance islamique, qui est destiné aux principaux acteurs de la finance islamique en Afrique, incluant notamment les régulateurs et les différents décideurs. Alors, l'objectif de ce webinaire, c'est de vous présenter ce document, mais pas seulement, c'est vraiment de partager avec vous et de discuter de l'importance de la finance islamique en Afrique, et puis de discuter donc des challenges et de voir quelles sont les solutions pour permettre l'émergence d'un marché et d'une plus intéressante croissance. Alors, le webinaire va s'articuler sur trois principaux points. Je vais d'abord très rapidement présenter les intervenants, dont j'ai passé très rapidement en revue le mini CV en anglais. Et puis ensuite, avec Evans Osano, qui représente FSDA, on va revenir justement sur le rôle de FSDA dans ce développement de la finance islamique. Quelle est sa position par rapport à la finance islamique et pourquoi est-ce qu'ils ont été amenés à faire ce Islamic Finance Toolkit, donc cette boîte à outils, et quel est le rôle de FSDA en général. Et puis, on reviendra également sur le rôle des acteurs comme IFAAS avec les différentes expériences que Farouk va aborder, notamment que nous avons eues au Kenya, en Afrique du Nord et en Afrique de l'Ouest. Evans aussi parlera de l'expérience du Kenya. Alors, on a le plaisir aujourd'hui d'avoir deux acteurs très impliqués dans la finance africaine. Alors, je vais me présenter moi très rapidement avant de présenter nos deux invités que sont Evans et Farouk. Alors, je travaille pour IFAAS depuis 2008 et j'ai la charge et la responsabilité de tous les projets dans les pays francophones. Depuis quelques années en particulier, nous travaillons beaucoup avec les régulateurs et j'ai eu le plaisir d'accompagner récemment la Banque centrale du Maroc, la Banque centrale de Mauritanie et par exemple aussi la Banque centrale d'Afrique de l'Ouest. Nous avons travaillé également pour différents ministères dans le cadre de projets sur les soukouks, par exemple avec le ministère des Finances du Maroc. Et voilà, je travaille aussi sur d'autres projets de fonds d'investissement, d'émissions de soukouk ou d'Islamic Window dans des banques conventionnelles. On a le plaisir aujourd'hui d'avoir avec nous Evans Osano, qui est le directeur des marchés de capitaux au sein de FSDA. Evans a plus de 30 ans d'expérience en fait, dans le monde de la finance, dans différentes régions d'ailleurs à travers le monde, pas qu'en Afrique. Il a été amené à travailler aussi dans des pays comme l'Asie, comme l'Afrique du Nord et l'Amérique du Nord et également en Europe. Donc, il a une expérience à travers une trentaine de pays. Et au sein de FSDA, il est en charge donc du développement et des initiatives en lien avec les marchés de capitaux en Afrique subsaharienne. Et cela comprend également donc, les marchés des green bonds, donc des obligations vertes, comme on dit, et de l'infrastructure des marchés, du développement de l'infrastructure des marchés. Farouk Raza, aussi, qui nous fait l'honneur d'être avec nous aujourd'hui, est le CEO de IFAAS, donc il est titulaire d'un MBA en management stratégique. Et bon, il a une très large expérience en finance islamique dans différents continents et avec différentes autorités, différentes banques centrales, sachant que IFAAS est installé donc, dans différents pays, et 5 pays au moins, l'Europe, le Royaume-Uni, la France, le Maroc, Bahreïn et le Pakistan. Et donc Farouk a la responsabilité de superviser tous les projets à travers le monde, ce qui lui donne une vision vraiment 360 de ce qui se passe et de l'évolution de la finance islamique à travers le monde. Et puis j'ai oublié de le souligner tout à l'heure aussi, il est impliqué au sein des instances de normalisation comme la OIFI. Then I will switch now to the English and I will give the floor to Evans. Hi Evans, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Bobka. Thank you very much for the opportunity and welcome everybody to this webinar. My presentation is going to be very brief. I'll talk a little bit about FSD Africa and what we are doing at FSD Africa, why Islamic finance is important to us, the role of this toolkit, and also talk a little bit about the experience we've had supporting Islamic finance markets development in Kenya. But maybe before I start, just to demystify this sector, Islamic finance is an industry that has been growing very fast. I'm sure many of you have read the Islamic Finance Stability Report that was just released early this month, and it shows that in 2019, the industry globally was at $2.44 trillion. That's a lot of money. Most of that is in the banking sector, about 72% of that. But I'm also very happy to note that the capital markets, or Islamic capital markets, has been growing very quickly, and now it accounts for about 26.5% of the Islamic finance markets globally. And then I've also seen very strong growth in Islamic funds. I think year-on-year growth of nearly 30%, which is quite interesting, as well as the equity markets. Takaful seems to be a little bit small at this point in time, but it shows the potential. So as Bubukar mentioned, in Africa, the share of Islamic finance is very, very small, I think about 2%. And yet we have a population of 1.2 billion people, of which a very big percentage of that, perhaps half of that, are people who ascribe to the Islamic faith. So it's a very important market in other words. So FSD Africa is a development agency. It's a specialized development agency. It's funded by the UK government and is supporting the financial sector development in Africa. And we do two main things. One is we provide advice to both the public and the private sectors in order to build the markets. We also provide capital in terms of equity or debt through our subsidiary FSD Africa Investments. Now, on the advice side or the technical assistance, we look at the markets from three main perspectives. One is around the credit markets. The other one is about risk markets or insurance. And then finally, the capital markets. The goal is to ensure that we have funding going to the real and social sectors where they are needed in order to create jobs and improve the quality of the basic services that are available for the African people. So within the long-term finance agenda or the capital markets agenda, we are currently active in 28 countries in Africa. And the goal again is to develop an ecosystem for the market so that we can raise long-term financing where it is needed most. We provide support in different areas of capital markets, supporting regulators. We have a flagship program called the Africa Regulatory Support Program that is supporting 10 regulators in Africa, across West Africa, East Africa, and Southern Africa, including working with the CREMPMF, that is the regulator for the regional market in West Africa. We also support products development. Bobka has mentioned about our work in climate finance or green bonds. That's very important. We also support Islamic finance, and we've been involved in this since 2015. We build market infrastructure and we provide training that is linked to very specific interventions in the market. So that is FSD Africa. So you may wonder how does Islamic finance fit into all these landscape? And we see this as very, very important and critical as part of the growth agenda for the continent. I talked about the large population in Africa, and a big percentage of that population is actually excluded from the financial sector, basically because of the faith that they adhere to. So companies and individuals are not able to access to finance because they're not being served by the conventional financing that is available. So that's why Islamic finance is actually very important to meet that very large population in Africa that is excluded. But more importantly, we also see Islamic finance as contributing to long-term capital mobilization that can go into productive sectors, that can be able to build infrastructure, that can be able to provide basic services, that can be able to generate jobs and improve people's incomes and livelihoods. And that capital can be raised domestically, and it can also be raised externally through flows that might come into the continent. That's why we see this as very, very important. Now, the toolkit that has been we are launching today is very important in that sense, because what we have observed is countries where Islamic finance has thrived are those countries where there's had very strong policy support for the market, having a very coordinated approach to the market development. Otherwise, the market will not grow very well. It will be very fragmented and segmented, and the full benefits of the potential for Islamic finance will not be realized. And so we believe that the toolkit is going to contribute very strongly towards, first of all, demystifying Islamic finance, and also providing policymakers and market participants a structured way of looking at how they can be able to deepen the markets in order to realize the potential that this market segment presents. So at FSD Africa, as I mentioned before, we've been involved in supporting Islamic finance market development since 2015, starting here in Kenya, where we worked with all the 5 financial sector regulators: banking, insurance, capital markets, and retirements, basically the Retirement Benefits Authority, to create a conducive environment for Islamic finance. And that looked at the policy environment, it looked at the governance arrangements for Islamic finance, and it also looked at tax implications for Islamic finance. And tax is particularly very important from the perspective of ensuring we have neutrality between Islamic finance products and the conventional products, because Islamic finance products are asset-based or asset-backed, and therefore there might be some tax disadvantages where the assets are moving maybe to an SPV, which might be subject to tax and back, yet this is just a financing mechanism. So in order to be able to grow that market, then you need to make sure that those distortions in the tax environments are removed, for example, to make it work very well. And then, of course, we also worked on a very specific regulatory environment and policy environment to support the growth of the market. And then in addition to that, this year we're also beginning to work with the CREMPMF to help in supporting a policy and regulatory environment for Islamic finance in the West Africa Economic and Monetary Union that will enable governments to raise money in the market, either in the form of sukuk or the private sector to be able to tap that market. So that has been our involvement in Islamic finance, and where we consider this toolkit that we are launching today to be very, very important. I probably will stop there. This is just a very high level overview, and I'm sure there will be questions that will come through, which then I can be able to respond much more specifically. But needless to say that we at FSD Africa are very excited by the prospect that this market provides for lifting the continent in terms of its developmental goals, and also our interest to work with stakeholders around the continent to support the development of the Islamic finance more broadly. So thank you very much. Let me stop there, Bubka, and maybe you can advise us on how to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Evans, for this first introduction. I will very quickly translate into French the main points that you have raised, Evans. Alors, Evans, qui est le directeur donc, des marchés de capitaux au sein de FSDA, alors j'ai oublié de dire aussi en introduction au public francophone que vous pouvez poser directement vos questions dans l'espace réservé à cet effet sur Zoom. Vous avez un icône questions-réponses, donc n'hésitez pas à poser des questions directement pendant que les intervenants parlent, plutôt que d'attendre la fin, et puis on prendra les questions s'il y en a au fur et à mesure. Alors, Evans a parlé rapidement de quelques chiffres de la finance islamique en général, et puis sur le continent africain. Il est surtout revenu sur l'importance de ce potentiel, comme je le disais aussi en introduction, sur le fait que pour l'instant, ça ne représente vraiment pas grand-chose sur le marché global, le continent africain, par rapport au potentiel qui représente près de 27% de la population musulmane mondiale. La finance islamique peut apporter énormément de choses sur différents besoins du continent africain. Alors, j'ai noté que, en fait, d'abord, avant d'entrer dans ces différents besoins, il a dit que FSDA intervenait dans plusieurs aspects, différents programmes, que ce soit environnementaux, que ce soit le développement des marchés de capitaux et donc l'éducation, donc à travers les différentes publications. Et alors, selon FSDA, donc la finance islamique, elle peut apporter plusieurs choses, notamment donc, contribuer à l'inclusion financière, comme chacun sait, et aussi, elle peut aussi, grâce aux ressources qu'elle peut attirer, que ce soit des ressources locales, mais également des ressources étrangères, notamment pour le développement à la fois des infrastructures, mais pas seulement, tant pour les besoins du secteur public, mais également pour les besoins du secteur privé. Et elle peut également être source de création d'emplois et pour les Africains. Alors, FSDA soutient le développement de la finance islamique en Afrique depuis 2015, si j'ai bien retenu, en apportant donc des assistances techniques et en particulier pour tout ce qui relève donc du volet réglementaire. Et cela inclut plusieurs aspects, donc à la fois les réglementations des marchés de capitaux, par exemple, mais également tous les besoins en termes de fiscalité, parce que, comme vous le savez, il est important que pour que la finance islamique puisse se développer, toucher et avoir un environnement fiscal propice à la finance islamique est fondamental pour éviter justement que la finance islamique ne soit trop coûteuse par rapport à la finance conventionnelle. Il a donné, par exemple, dans certaines émissions de Soukouk, il y a des transferts d'actifs, comme vous le savez, entre les originateurs et les SPV, qui peuvent entraîner des frottements fiscaux importants. Il est donc nécessaire pour les différentes autorités de mettre en place le cadre fiscal nécessaire, en plus du cadre réglementaire. À titre d'exemple, récemment, FSDA apporte un soutien au CREPMF, par exemple en parlant des régulateurs de l'Afrique subsaharienne. En l'occurrence, là, il s'agit de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, donc le CREPMF, le Conseil régional pour l'épargne, je ne sais plus ce que ça veut dire, pour les marchés financiers. Donc, c'est l'autorité des marchés financiers de l'Afrique de l'Ouest qui est soutenue donc par le FSDA pour la mise en place d'un marché de capitaux, d'une réglementation propice au marché de capitaux islamiques, et ceci inclut donc à la fois les soukouk, mais pas seulement, notamment donc tous les fonds d'investissement et les OPCVM qui peuvent être intéressants pour les investisseurs qui sont soucieux d'investir donc conformément à la finance et au principe de la finance islamique. Donc voilà très rapidement ce que je peux dire en résumé, avant de passer maintenant la parole à Farouk, qui va pouvoir lui aussi donner l'expérience de IFAAS sur le continent africain, et puis peut-être rentrer avec un peu plus de détails sur quelques exemples concrets comme le Kenya ou d'autres pays en Afrique de l'Ouest ou en Afrique du Nord. Farouk, I'll give you the floor now. If you can just turn on your camera, if possible, and you can start your session.
Okay, thank you, Boubacar. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hello, everybody. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. I would like to switch on my camera, but it seems like it has been, I think, prevented by the host. So I'll wait for it, until it becomes available. But anyway, let's carry on. So thank you, Boubacar, and thank you, Evans, and thank you all the participants. It's a real pleasure for us to be here with you, sharing our humble experience with you, and also, doing the official launch of the FSD Africa Islamic Finance Toolkit. Now, as Evans has already done a great job in demystifying some of the basic aspects of Islamic finance, I will take probably a step back a little bit, and try to identify what is Islamic finance about, first of all, and then we will talk about what is in it for Africa. And then we will, I'll continue with some of my thoughts. So thank you very much for your patience and bearing with me. So what is Islamic finance all about? As it's called Islamic finance, of course, the name tells you that something to do, with Muslims or with Islam. Now, surprisingly, the reality is actually a little bit different, meaning that this is a form of finance that actually originates from the Islamic or the Muslim religion, Islam, but it's actually for everyone, anyone and everyone in this world, whether they are an individual or a family or a community or a business or an entrepreneur or a government or a country, everybody is able to benefit from it. This is completely open to everyone. This is not a religious offer. This is not a religious product. This is actually a different way of doing finance. We have seen so many other things, emerging in the last decade, I would say. For example, the ESG, the SRI, the green bonds, and so on and so forth. So all of them, they are, different forms of finance, and so is Islamic finance. So it has its own tenets, it has its own principles, and they make it different, from what we usually see in conventional finance. It treats money in a different way. It treats, the participants in the financial system in a different way, based on more transparency, more emphasis on fairness, on, sharing the responsibility, sharing, the risk and the reward, and so on. So this is a different approach towards finance and towards money. So why this is important to establish this fact before we move on, that, when we talk about 27% of African population coming from, from Muslim background, this is great, but the remaining 70% of the African population is equally able to benefit from it. So I think we have to look at the bigger picture. Of course, the primary audience of Islamic financial system or product will be, the Muslims, but there is a great deal of opportunity and there is a great deal of benefit for, everyone, regardless of, who they are. So this is the first thing. Now, the second point that I want to cover is that what is in it for Africa? As we know, the industrial revolution has happened in the West, and then it has gone to the East, and the clock is ticking. And I think, I'm one of those people who very, very firmly believe that Africa is the future of the world. The clock is ticking, and it's the arm of the clock is moving, from north to east and then to south. So the next few decades are definitely going to be, Africa, and probably more, maybe, centuries. And this is where African continent has a great opportunity waiting for it, right in front of, its doorstep. Having a very, relatively young population, having, a great deal of talent and, passion that we see very, clearly in the African people, and their commitment and the seriousness. All this will, constitute great economies, and we can see a lot of African economies are emerging very fast. And there are projections that many of them will be actually becoming, very important players in the world economy in the next, few years. Now, how this is going to happen? These things, they don't happen on their own. Of course, the opportunity comes. Of course, there are many other things that will come, and also, it requires a lot of vision, a lot of, strategy being in place, and so on. And hence, a number of African governments we have seen, whether they are, North Africa or West or East Africa or South Africa, all of them have put, strategies in place. There are visions, there are, these big plans to benefit from this opportunity and to make sure that everything that is required to make this happen, to make this dream of African, what should we say, excellence, a reality. A number of things have been put in place. And, for example, Kenya Vision 2030 is, one of those great initiatives that requires, Kenya to become a middle income country by the end of 2030. Similarly, we have seen, similar types of, visions and initiatives, from other countries in Africa as well. So all these things, they include different aspects of financial inclusion. They include different types of infrastructure development, economic development, where new jobs will be created, where new industries will be established, and especially when we are talking about, technology these days, the new industrial revolution is actually based on technology, and technology, a lot of technology actually does come from Africa. Everybody knows that M-Pesa, it was technically, the first fintech, if you want, in the world. So, this is just one of the, the proofs that, what the opportunity can be in Africa. So to make all these things happen, we have to create this environment where all these aspects are addressed, and every single individual in, in Africa is contributing positively towards this economic development and towards this opportunity to come, so that, they can build the country, they can build, the continent, and they can benefit, from this opportunity. And this is where I think Islamic finance becomes, very, very handy, because it helps directly with financial inclusion. As Evans mentioned, that a big, portion of this Muslim population in Africa is not able to benefit from, the financial offers that are in place because of faith reasons, and they simply don't want to engage in in interest that is prohibited, in Islam. So when you have an alternative available for these people, when all these young entrepreneurs, they are, very, very passionate about their knowledge, about, they want to do things and they want to contribute towards this economic development, then, it makes every sense to enable them to benefit, from access to finance that is not, that does not compromise their, faith, but it actually helps them in benefiting and in, taking this, opportunity to the best level possible. Also, the infrastructure requirements, because all these things, great things happening in Africa, but that will require a lot of infrastructure, and that will include everything and anything that you can imagine, whether it's electricity, different forms of energy, ports, airports, highways, and so on and so forth. And of course, then you have the projects of economic development, meaning factories and warehouses and so on. So all this will require a lot of financing, and of course there are a number of channels available already that a number of countries are benefiting from them as well. But again, the need is much bigger, and the countries, they need to diversify their sources of funding, and they need to engage more people, more investors, and offer them the opportunities. And of course, with the investment, it's not only the money that comes in, it actually comes with a number of other advantages, which is also including number of you get the mentoring from the capital providers, you benefit from their knowledge and experience in other markets, etc., so on. So all this will help Africa in making this dream reality, and Islamic finance is poised to play a key role in this. So this is why it's important for Africa to look at it very seriously, and a number of countries are actually doing a great job in this. We have seen this happening. Now, when you make, when we want to do these, now the first thing is actually, look at the challenges. The biggest challenge that we have, observed is having, a dilemma where to start. So a country, decides, okay, like, great, we have an opportunity here, we want to do Islamic finance, we have, Islamic population, or even if we don't have, but we still want to explore, this opportunity, but where do we start? And which way to go? So obviously these days, Google has made, many things much easier, so anybody can Google, but then the more you Google, the more you get confused. Okay, what do I do? Do I follow what UK did, for example, or should I just, go to Malaysia, learn from them? They have a great system that's working. I just, copy, paste, and I do it in my country. Is it going to work? Probably yes, probably not. So these are the challenges. And then how I'm going to do that, so I do not have the people actually who know, what to do, and how I'm going to provide all these things. So this is where it becomes very challenging. So the countries, they will want to do things, and they are, doing a number of, they're making a number of efforts, but it's still difficult because of lack of capacity, because of access to the knowledge and experience, and so on. So this is where FSD Africa and IFAAS, they become, they are at the disposal of, all these authorities, the regulators, and the stakeholders in, African economies, to help them establish the Islamic finance ecosystem that will be required, because it's not only a matter of just issuing a sukuk or having an Islamic bank in the country. Of course, it's better than nothing, but it's not going to help as much as it would be. So in order to unlock the potential, what is required is to have a complete ecosystem that helps establish the industry on very sound foundations, and that creates the opportunity to benefit from this environment, and make it beneficial for everyone, and to optimize the output of all these efforts. So FSD Africa and IFAAS had the opportunity of starting a project in Kenya. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, and that's when the Kenyan government decided to have a project management office for the government established in Nairobi, in the capital, and that was the project management office, or the PMO, was to lead on this work, in Islamic finance in the country. So IFAAS, being selected, established the PMO under the umbrella of the National Treasury, or in other countries it's known as Ministry of Finance. And then the PMO worked very closely with all the stakeholders, but mainly with the financial sector regulators. There are 5 in Kenya. So all of them, there was, including the Capital Market Authority, the Central Bank, the Microfinance Authority, and the Pensions Authority. All of them work together with the PMO to develop the capacity, first of all, among all these regulators and the stakeholders, also creating the awareness, also creating the infrastructure for Islamic finance. And that was precisely including changes to the legislation in Kenya that helped recognize Islamic finance as a mode of finance, that gave the definitions, the legal definitions to different types of instruments, and above all created a level playing field in terms of taxation, as Evans briefly touched upon, that due to the different nature of an Islamic finance product, the taxation may be different, and that's why sometimes those products, they can be more expensive, and obviously their take-up will be compromised due to this premium that has to be paid. Which is obviously wrong. In a democratic country, things have to be on par for everyone. So what we did in Kenya, like in many other countries, was actually removing all these hurdles and creating a parity between the taxation of conventional financial products and Islamic financial products, meaning that any product, whether it's conventional or Islamic, when it's taken from a taxation standpoint, it's going to be exactly the same, and there is no advantage or disadvantage to any one of them. So this is just a few of the things that we did, and that was very helpful in creating the environment that has enabled the 3 Islamic banks that were operating in the country already to do a much better function, to increase their market share, to increase their outreach to the customers, but also the Islamic windows of several commercial and conventional banks that have been operating as well. It has also led to the establishment of a few Islamic microfinance initiatives as well, and so on and so forth. So this is something that is helping Kenya in achieving its strategic goals that have been set out in the Kenya Vision 2030. Now, similarly, there are a number of other projects that have been done in different parts of Africa, as Bubakar mentioned already. We have done things in north of Africa. We have done things, a lot of things actually in West Africa as well, including working very closely with the BCAO and developing the Islamic banking, Islamic capital market, Islamic microfinance frameworks, and giving them the taxation and accounting and all these frameworks, and then Sharia governance frameworks. So everything has been set up. So it's great to hear that KPMF is now working on bringing a new regulatory framework that is very much required actually, and FSD Africa is providing this technical and financial assistance to them. So this is a great opportunity. I'm very certain that if we continue with these initiatives in Africa, it will help tremendously in facilitating the growth and development of Islamic finance. It will enable the countries to benefit from this opportunity and to be ready for this big wave of economic development that is coming. And we hope that Islamic finance will play a key role in driving this change for the better, and it will spur the economic development through a mode of finance that will be equally acceptable for people of all backgrounds. It will also help the governments and the regulatory authorities to benefit from this upward take up, I would say. And the purpose of this toolkit that Bubakar, while I was speaking, he was scrolling through this document. I think it's a good 80-page or 100-page document, and that is available in English and in French. And the purpose of this document is to first of all demystify. So they're just providing some very basic explanations of Islamic finance, what it is, what does it mean, how does it work, how is it different from conventional finance, how it will be able to benefit the African players, and what do they need to do. So we have provided very comprehensive information, but in a very simple way to help people understand. And the objective of this toolkit is to enable the authorities, the African authorities, to the African stakeholders, to see for themselves that what they can do, and it also gives them the direction of how to do it. And this is where I believe it's a stepping stone towards a much bigger partnership and collaboration between FSD Africa and IFAAS, and of course, the African stakeholders of financial markets. So I'll stop here, and I'll hand it over to Bubakar for a little summary in French, and I'm more than happy to take the questions, later on as they come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Farouk. I will very quickly give the main points, but maybe I've missed some of your intervention because I was looking to the file. Then do not hesitate to complete in French. Alors, Farouk a rappelé un petit peu d'abord, qu'est-ce que la finance islamique? Et il a souligné un point important en insistant sur le fait que c'est vrai que sur le continent africain, et c'est pour cette raison d'ailleurs qu'il a insisté à rappeler d'abord ce qu'est la finance islamique, c'est que sur le continent africain, si on a aujourd'hui 27% de la population qui est musulmane, on en a plus de 70 qui n'est pas musulmane. Alors, ça veut dire que la finance islamique n'est pas, et comme vous le savez, elle n'est pas réservée aux musulmans. Ça veut dire que tout le monde peut bénéficier des avantages de la finance islamique, et la finance islamique étant universelle, elle s'adresse donc à tous les Africains, quelle que soit leur religion. Donc, c'est important de souligner que la finance islamique n'est pas une finance religieuse, ça tous les spécialistes le savent. Simplement, elle apporte une nouvelle manière de faire de la finance. Elle vient avec des outils qui sont un peu différents de ceux de la finance classique, mais il y a certains outils qui sont aussi disponibles dans la finance classique. Simplement, il faut qu'ils respectent certains aspects du droit musulman des affaires pour rentrer dans la case ou dans le segment de la finance islamique. Et donc, c'était important de souligner ces points communs et surtout le fait que la finance islamique n'est pas réservée aux musulmans. Et partant de là, lorsque tous les Africains peuvent donc s'approprier les instruments de la finance islamique. Là, Farouk, après, je t'ai perdu un peu parce que j'étais en train de chercher justement le fichier pour l'afficher à l'écran, donc tu pourras compléter ce que tu disais à ce moment-là. Par contre, j'ai noté aussi ce que tu disais sur l'importance et le rôle des régulateurs. Alors, tu as parlé de l'exemple du Kenya, dans lequel IFAAS, avec FSDA, on a mené une mission relativement importante au Kenya, qui peut d'ailleurs servir de modèle pour d'autres régions ou d'autres pays africains, dans la mesure où le Kenya a pris le sujet vraiment à bras-le-corps de façon très globale en mettant en place un PMO, donc un Project Management Office, donc une espèce de bureau dans lequel tous les acteurs ou tout l'écosystème financier kényan était impliqué. Donc, bien entendu, c'était sous la tutelle du ministère des Finances, mais en plus du ministère des Finances, les différentes autres autorités étaient bien impliquées dans le développement de la finance islamique, ce qui a permis donc d'adresser la finance islamique dans tous les segments de la finance, à la fois dans le secteur bancaire, incluant aussi la microfinance et les marchés de capitaux, mais pas seulement. Donc là, tu pourras compléter, Farouk, parce que je sais que tu étais très impliqué dans ce projet-là. Et ça a permis donc à la fois de dresser les besoins du marché, mais également les besoins et les problématiques réglementaires et les problématiques fiscales. Autre chose qui a aussi été dit de la part de Farouk, qui est important, c'est que les régulateurs ou les autorités plutôt africaines s'intéressent depuis très longtemps finalement à la finance islamique. Et ils ont compris en fait tout ce qu'elle peut apporter, mais il demeure un problème, c'est qu'ils ne savent pas par où commencer finalement. La finance islamique, ils ont compris ce que c'était, mais comment la mettre en œuvre? Comment vraiment pouvoir bénéficier de tout ce qu'elle peut apporter? Alors, il y a plein de choses qui se disent sur Google, mais ça ne suffit pas d'aller sur Google, comme vous le savez, et de se dire, bon, bah, tiens, la Malaisie, elle a fait comme ça, ou l'Indonésie, elle a fait comme ça. Est-ce qu'on peut réellement bénéficier des expériences des autres pays qui ont de l'avance par rapport aux pays africains, ou bien est-ce qu'il ne faut pas avoir une approche purement contextualisée? Donc, Farouk, je vais te laisser compléter peut-être un peu ce que tu as dit par rapport à ce que j'ai noté, et je vais commencer à regarder les questions qui ont été posées pour pouvoir, quand c'est nécessaire, les traduire à Evans ou te les formuler à toi.
Ok, merci Luca. Le modèle kenyan, en fait, l'expérience kenyenne qu'on a eue, c'était basé sur la collaboration de tous les acteurs. Alors ça, c'était très, très important. Il y avait 5 régulateurs de marché financier. Il y avait le ministère de Finances et il y avait bien sûr d'autres acteurs commerciaux et les autres qui sont été très impliqués. Et il y avait un bureau central, en fait, qui a fait la coordination et la modération, en fait, de tous les efforts qui ont été menés. Et c'était un engagement continu et il y avait vraiment un échange très, très vif et qui a duré pendant longtemps. Donc, on a développé déjà ce qu'on a fait. Alors, on a commencé par le renforcement de capacité. Bien sûr, qu'il y avait une bonne connaissance, une bonne compréhension qui existait au Kenya, comme la finance islamique a été présente sur le sol kenyan pour 10 ans quand on a commencé à travailler. Mais c'était un petit peu fragmenté. Donc, nous, ce qu'on a fait tout d'abord, on a renforcé la capacité, on a amené tous les acteurs au même niveau de compréhension, on a démystifié, on a fait comprendre en fait de ce qui est le vrai esprit de la finance islamique. Et après, on a commencé à travailler pour le développement les amendements dans la législation, on a préparé les cadres réglementaires, on a préparé en fait les stratégies pour la croissance du marché et tout ça. Et c'était un process en fait qui a continué sur 12 ans. Et dans les 12 ans de cette durée, alors nous, on n'a pas arrêté en fait cet engagement, c'était un process qui continue. Et ça a été énormément apprécié par tous les acteurs et tout le monde était très passionné. Et on a reçu en fait un soutien qui était vraiment incomparable par rapport aux autres pays. Donc ça, c'est un modèle qui était bien prouvé, son succès, et j'espère que c'est un modèle qui peut être facilement répliqué dans les autres pays africains. Alors, ce qui est important ici, j'ai déjà dit dans mon intervention en anglais, c'est qu'il ne faut pas que les pays ils tentent d'implanter en fait un modèle qui marche ailleurs. Il n'y a aucune assurance en fait que ce modèle va marcher aussi dans un pays africain. Le contexte est différent, le contexte est différent, les circonstances sont différentes et bien sûr, alors chaque pays a ses propres nuances dans la législation, dans le contexte culturel, religieux, etc., etc. Donc, il faut bien sûr s'inspirer aux autres expériences. Donc, si la Malaisie a fait des bonnes choses, l'Angleterre a fait des bonnes choses, la Turquie, le Maroc, etc. Alors, bien sûr, il y a des choses à apprendre, il y a des choses à s'inspirer, mais il faut développer un modèle qui est vraiment authentique, qui est vraiment local. C'est comme ça que vous pouvez assurer que toutes les choses sont bien encadrées et les nuances sont bien adressées. Alors, il ne faut pas qu'on laisse les choses au hasard. Et c'est exactement là que l'expérience d'IFAAS et la disponibilité de ressources financières et techniques de la part de FSD Africa sont, je pense, quelque chose de très précieux pour les pays, pour les acteurs qui s'intéressent à la finance islamique. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Farouk, d'avoir complété. Thank you very much, Farouk, to have completed the French translation. Maybe now, Evans and Farouk, we can switch to the questions, if you are okay. Evans, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. I'm still with you.
Okay. We have received one first question that has been submitted by Mamadou Sherif Diaro. It is in French, but it's a very interesting question. Maybe you can answer to this in French. Then he said, Mamadou a dit, l'idée c'est de proposer une coordination entre les acteurs de la sous-région ouest africaine afin de faire bénéficier l'expérience des uns et des autres. Mamadou is talking about the West African experience, and he's asking, it's not really a question, but it's a comment, how it's possible to set up regional wide coordination to allow different countries in West Africa to benefit from each other's experience. What can FSDA do in this purpose?
Yeah, so thank you very much for that question. And I know there's been a lot of work being undertaken by the authorities in the West African Monetary Union to support the development of Islamic finance. We are very much aware of the work that the BCIO, the Regional Central Bank, has been doing. And I know one of the priorities is around governance, Islamic governance, which is very important in that region. But in addition to that, we are working with the CREMPMF, which is the regional securities markets regulator for all the 8 countries, to establish a framework, a regulatory framework to promote Islamic finance. And one of the areas that we are looking to support is include basically establishing some sort of diagnostic or market assessment of the region, so we understand what the issues are and how that can be addressed, and then drafting an appropriate policy and regulatory framework for the establishment of Islamic capital markets. And then finally, we also want to look at the issues of capacity. So we'll be looking at proposing some roadmap on capacity building that will promote the West African Monetary Union Islamic capital markets, and of course raise awareness for that sector among the regulators and also the market players. So the beautiful thing about the West African Monetary Union is the fact that it's a regional market. So they have just one regulator, and hopefully once we have the policies in place, the framework in place, it's going to be beneficial for all the 8 countries that are members of the West African Monetary Union. That's beautiful. And then we also have a regional central bank as well. So that also makes it much easier to coordinate this kind of issues for the benefit of the region and also the stakeholders there.
Okay, and I think it will not be easier than in Kenya to set up a kind of PMO at a regional
regional level.
Regional PMO, but it's easy. Yeah. It will not be easy, even if we have one regulator for 8 countries. But do you think it's possible to set up a kind of PMO in West Africa?
Yeah, so the main challenge is about, what can I call it? The main challenge will be the fact that, yes, it's a regional market. So we have regional regulators like CREMPMF that is looking at the capital markets, and BCIO that is looking at what do you call it, the banking, and the other regulators as well. So that, of course, there's a bit of a complexity in terms of how they work in practice. So the coordination is a very important thing, obviously. It's more challenging because the regulators are represented by different countries in a way. So we'll have to think about how a regional PMO can work and who's going to coordinate that. But it's probably slightly more difficult because it's a regional market, but there are many countries that are members, and we have to have activities being supported at the country level, because we don't want to have everything being done at the regional level, and the countries like Burkina Faso, who may need to do something on the ground, may not be able to do that and be adequately supported. So it's possible, but it comes with certain challenges. And of course, there are benefits because of the the regional nature of that market.
Yes, and if the West African know success in this kind of project, it can be replicated to the Central Africa, because it's a kind of the same they have the same concerns for Islamic finance, and also maybe the same dynamics of the market, because they have a central regional central bank. They have the COSUMAF, the same, the homologue of the CREPMF, and maybe if we can set up a kind of regional PMO in West Africa, this experience can also
replicated.
be replicated, yes, in Central Africa. Farouk, you want to add something?
Can I, sorry, let me just add one more point as well, because yes, one of the other advantages that the regional has is that they have Agence Moi Titre, which is the regional debt management office. So I guess if the region is going to be, or the countries will be looking to issue sukuks, there's already some sort of coordination mechanism through AUT that can work directly with the debt management offices in the different countries to do this. Okay. So there's a mechanism there that can also support that.
Okay, okay, interesting. Yes, Farouk, you want to add something about the West Africa?
Yes, Bukar, I think, the idea of having a project management office, I think can be very practical, but obviously a lot of work has already been done, under the BCAO. So going forward, having something like this can be definitely very handy. This is something that, can be discussed with the FSD Africa if the market players and the stakeholders in West Africa are interested in exploring this idea. Yeah, and with your permission, Bubakar, I have seen a question that I would also like to ask, if you allow me.
Yes, of course. I will just very quickly translate the answer to Mamadou Cherif Diallo in French.
Sure.
Yes, Mamadou, donc la réponse a été donnée. On est allé un petit peu plus loin, c'est-à-dire d'essayer est-ce qu'il est possible de répliquer le modèle du Kenya à travers donc ce bureau central dans lequel il y a toutes les entités. C'est facile à faire à l'échelle d'un pays, c'est un peu plus délicat à faire à l'échelle de toute une région, bien que c'est effectivement quelque chose qui pourrait être étudié, pour être mis en place. Et bon, il y a déjà un certain nombre de choses qui ont été faites en Afrique de l'Ouest, et Evans a rappelé notamment le travail fait de la BCAO. Entre parenthèses, j'ai eu le plaisir d'ailleurs de travailler sur ce projet-là. Et plus récemment encore, donc la Banque centrale, la BCAO se pose des questions sur la gouvernance charia, donc à l'échelle régionale, et aussi comment homogénéiser les pratiques des contrats. Et puis au sein du CREPMF aussi, on l'a dit à plusieurs reprises, donc FSDA soutient le CREPMF pour un projet intéressant en vue du développement des marchés de capitaux islamiques, qui va passer par plusieurs étapes. D'abord le diagnostic du marché actuel et de la réglementation, et puis aussi donc faire des propositions pour faire évoluer les textes si besoin, et puis également mettre en place une feuille de route pour permettre, et ça va rejoindre une autre question qui a été posée, le renforcement des capacités donc des régulateurs et également des professionnels sur ce sujet-là. Voilà, j'espère qu'on a répondu au moins partiellement à votre question. Yes, Farouk, please take the floor to answer to the question. If you can just recall the question that you are going to answer.
Yes, the question is from Toots. Tax is one aspect to ensure parity. It is important, but there are other areas like Basel, implementation, and the insurance industry regulations that need to be applied. So could you give us some insights into this? Now, I think this is a very important point that has been raised. And just to complete, the picture, Islamic finance regulations are, very much, similar to what would we say, what we see in conventional industry. And as a result, there are, a couple of standard setting bodies that are very active in Islamic finance. So these are industry setting bodies. One of them is called IOFI, that is providing the standards for Sharia, for, accounting, auditing, governance, and ethics. And that is very much, comparable to what you see in in conventional corporate governance and auditing, etc. And then for Basel and anything to do with the prudential and risk management, etc., and so on, is Islamic Financial Services Board. That is based in Malaysia, and they are working closely with the Basel Committee and with other partners to make sure that the Islamic financial institutions, they are conforming not only to the Sharia requirements but also the regulatory requirements, and they are they fit into the to the bigger picture of the financial sector. Now there are a lot more details that have been included on this certain aspect in the Islamic Finance Toolkit that you can download easily from the link that is being displayed on the on the screen, or from the FSD Africa website. And I think this important area has been duly addressed for some basic information, and then of course any details can be provided later also if required. Thank you.
Okay, maybe another question for you, Farouk, regarding the Moroccan market. Umayma is asking, for the case of Morocco, could you detail what the next steps should be? We know that in Morocco there is a banking law dedicated, not dedicated, but it is included in the global banking law for the participative banks, and whether the path followed by Moroccan authorities was right. It's a large question. It's not easy to say if it's what's right or wrong. But what is your advice for the Moroccan market?
Yeah, I think the Moroccan market has evolved a lot, in the last few years. With the banking law, with the securities law, it's I think making big progress. Sharia governance has been introduced and so on. Obviously, the regulatory authorities in Morocco have to continue strengthening the frameworks, and to they need to create more awareness, because that's probably one of the weaker points, I would say. People or the consumers are still are not fully aware of the availability of these products and how they are different and how they fulfill their financial needs while remaining true to their faith. This is where probably the biggest I think effort is required. And of course, then there is a time that is required, for the industry to take its natural course. So that will happen over time. But I believe that Morocco has a very good potential to be to develop a very good and very strong domestic market, but also be a regional player. When it comes to Islamic finance. Now, the second part of the question, I think, is not for me to comment. I think it will be only the time that will tell that how effective the route was. But at least it's working, and I hope that it will really help the industry to establish and grow.
Okay, an interesting question from Ibn al-Arabi al-Ghani. He's saying, Salam, who do you foresee are the key beneficiaries of Islamic finance in African countries? And another question, what financial instruments offer the highest potential in the African context? Maybe both of you, Evans and Farouk, can give some points to respond to these questions.
Farouk, you want to start?
Okay, thank you, Evans. Right, the beneficiaries of Islamic finance in African countries are, first of all, the governments themselves. It will help them in diversifying their sources of funding. It will help them in building their infrastructure, funding their infrastructure. It will help them with their financial inclusion strategies. It will help them with anything that you can think of. I think I tried to summarize in my first intervention. So the governments are definitely the beneficiaries. Then you have the collectivities, meaning the quasi-government authorities. For example, it could be the provincial governments, or for their local infrastructure. It could be the projects of sanitization, clean water, renewable energy, and so on. So, you name it, all of them are potential beneficiaries of this. But most of all, it's actually the population, the individuals and the small businesses and the entrepreneurs. Now, because of the very spirit of Islamic finance that requires or that promotes sharing the risk and reward, this has a natural fit with the entrepreneurial culture. This is basically the objective of Sharia, to spur this culture of entrepreneurial aspect, and then making sure that the money does not sit idle. It's not just being parked in high yielding deposit accounts and so on, but it remains in circulation, that spins the wheel of the economic wheel, and it gives opportunities to the younger people who are talented, who are passionate about, and who are who have a lot of energy to work. So this is where it will be highly beneficial in establishing small businesses and creating all those things. Of course, some regions unfortunately are suffering with poverty, and again, this is something that can be very, very helpful in poverty alleviation through the microfinance initiatives and so on. Insurance, I think, is another big one, because the conventional insurance penetration is also very low in Africa compared to other parts of the world. So when there is a potential for insurance, and you offer a takaful insurance, an Islamic insurance, then naturally it becomes a much bigger, I would say, attraction for people to consume this insurance that is also in line with their religious practices. So I believe, again, this is something that has a big potential there. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I add? Let me add maybe one or 2 points as well. And I think Farouk, you have summarized it very well. But I think it's very important, as we discuss the promotion of Islamic finance in Africa, to try and demystify this, because this is a very strong and very critical complementary source of finance, even for people who don't ascribe to the Islamic faith. For those ones who do, I think, of course, it provides a very critical finance, and they are probably excluded at the moment. And I think the other point I just needed to say is that, Islamic finance, to me, I think one of the major attractions is the ethical standards underlying that finance, and the fact that we have very good risk-sharing mechanisms within Islamic finance, which we don't find in conventional finance. And because it's a robust way of looking at financing, it's something that can also be applied to address some of the emerging challenges that the continent is facing. For example, climate finance. So the role of sukuk markets in addressing climate finance is something that we need to explore as well. So green sukuks, or what we call double green, is actually something that hopefully over time will also emerge as a mainstream way of financing some of the challenges that we are facing as a continent.
Thank you, Evans. Maybe I have another question for you and Farouk from Renata Deliers. She's saying, before launching Islamic insurance, then her question is focused on Islamic insurance, takaful, we need a well-developed Islamic capital market. Does this market exist in Eastern African countries?
Okay, so maybe I'll respond to that, and maybe Farouk can add to that. So the market is very nascent. The capital market in the East Africa region is nascent. And then, of course, when you look at Islamic capital markets, it's still even more nascent. But I think the foundations have been laid, basically building on the work that FSD Africa, with the support of technical support of IFAAS, provided. They have laid a very strong foundation for the Islamic capital markets to thrive. So definitely from a policy environment, from a regulatory environment, from a tax environment, I think that is that foundation has already been laid. Now we are beginning to see quite a bit of interest from firms that are interested in offering these products in the market. And we have a few, I think there's one fund that is already in the market. There's one intermediary that is focusing on the sector that has already started. Of course, as Farouk mentioned, the banking sector has been a little bit more advanced in that. And then, of course, we have also seen insurance already. Actually, there are insurance companies that are providing takaful in Kenya as well. So that is already evolving, and we do hope that given the regulatory environment, the policy environment is now conducive, that we'll start seeing more financial instruments, Islamic financial instruments coming to the market, including sukuk, hopefully over time, in the fullness of time, starting with the sovereign sukuk and looking into the corporate sukuk as well. So they can say the foundations are there. We are not there yet in terms of tapping the potential that is there, but I think all the elements are now in place.
Thank you, Evans. I think you have very beautifully answered the question, and there is nothing much, to be added from my side. So maybe we can take one more question and maybe then move towards the end of the seminar.
Yes, maybe we can just take one or two questions, and I apologize because it will not be possible to take all the questions because I have promised to the speakers that to 75 or 20 minutes maximum for this webinar. But it's not easy for me to select the two last questions. Maybe one in French and one in English. One interesting question from TV Niton Makouvé about sukuk. There is a comment and a question at the same time. Sukuk, the Makouvé is saying, sukuk seemed to have potential to finance Africa's infrastructure development projects, yes, and other countries such as South Africa, Senegal, Togo, we can also add Ivory Coast, have issued sukuk for infrastructure development. I'm not sure that in West Africa the sukuk issuance was dedicated to infrastructure development, but he's saying it seems this mode of financing is failing to take root in the rest of Africa. What could be the reason for this? Maybe Farouk, you can start, and Evans can complete.
Okay, well, thank you, Makouvé. Sukuk, yes, you're right. In Africa, the sukuk issuances, are really minimal compared to many other parts of the world. In my view, it's purely due to the lack of awareness, and that's why we, brought out this toolkit to help people understand that, what a sukuk will mean. So, it's a very fashionable word these days, by the way, in financial sector, but a lot of people still do not understand that what will be meant by a sukuk, how it will be different, from a conventional. And then when they do a little bit of, research, they become a little bit confused and to some degree maybe a bit worried as well, because sukuk, when they see that it's a document, it's an instrument that is, that seems apparently to be more complex than, a bond transaction that is, that has a different risk profile and it has a different mode of remuneration. So then, it causes, quite a few worries, in those people, especially who are in the decision-making, positions. So the best way of doing this is actually by demystification and by creating this awareness, within the community of those people who are in the decision-making positions, to make sure that they understand that yes, it is different, but it's it is actually able to give you similar results while giving you the legal protection that is as solid as a bond, and probably even better, for the issuer and also for the investor. Plus the risk profile, of course, it will be different, but then it has to be managed accordingly as well. And these mechanisms are now very elaborate. So again, this is something that is down to capacity. So the capacity can be built, and again, this is something that FSD Africa offers, to help build this capacity. So once people know, they understand, this fear of unknown is, something that is, becoming a showstopper. But we are seeing that naturally, as people are becoming more aware, they are learning more about these things, they are becoming more familiar, and hence we believe that in the coming years, months and years, is going to be different. It's going to be much better in Africa. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Farouk. Can I add maybe 3 quick points to that? first of all, just note that the sukuk market has been growing globally very strongly. I think I see the numbers of 544 billion outstanding last year, which is a 30% growth. So that basically is a lot of potential, and I hope we can be able to tap that in Africa as well. So in addition to the point that Farouk has mentioned, I am aware that at least in the West Africa region, West Africa monetary region, there is quite a bit of appetite, from what I understand, for sovereign sukuk issuances. And we do hope that the work that we do with the CREMP-MF jointly will unlock that market. But also the other point I wanted to mention is that it's also not good to look at this product in isolation. I think what we have seen so far is that markets that then develop and become large and important Islamic finance centers, they tend to have a comprehensive outlook in terms of promoting the overall market. That way, then you can be able to address these challenges of awareness, capacity, and all that, and hopefully you grow an ecosystem, because a lot of these markets instruments are sort of connected in different ways. So that probably will be my addition to what Farouk has mentioned, which is quite excellent.
Thank you to Farouk and Evans. Maybe one last question, except if you want to reply to any other questions, Farouk and Evans. One question in French from Abdurrahman Fifen. I will reply directly to him in French. Abdurrahman nous demande: le secteur financier informel influence beaucoup les pratiques financières en Afrique. Comment la finance islamique pourrait résoudre le problème du faible taux de bancarisation en Afrique? Pouvez-vous nous donner des exemples concrets en Afrique? Alors, pour être très honnête, en réalité, pour l'instant, au jour d'aujourd'hui, c'est très difficile de dire que la finance islamique est la solution pour améliorer le taux de bancarisation de façon explosive ou exponentielle. Il est clair que la finance islamique peut contribuer à l'inclusion financière, mais à elle seule n'est pas la solution pour inclure dans le système financier tous les Africains, qu'ils soient d'ailleurs musulmans ou pas, ou en particulier d'ailleurs les Africains de confession musulmane. La finance islamique, elle peut apporter une valeur ajoutée certaine au marché. Alors en Afrique, d'ailleurs, à travers les différents segments, notamment à travers la microfinance islamique. Donc, je crois, Abdurrahman, que vous êtes au Cameroun ou au Sénégal, je ne sais plus, mais en tout cas, il y a dans ces pays-là déjà des initiatives qu'il faut suivre, et on pourra constater et conclure dans 5 ans ou dans 10 ans, est-ce que la finance islamique aura contribué de façon forte à la bancarisation? En tout cas, il y a de nombreux pays, comme par exemple le Sénégal, qui ont inscrit la finance islamique comme étant qui ont inscrit la finance islamique dans leur plan de développement pour les 5 et 10 prochaines années, comme étant un des vecteurs et un des moyens de développer l'inclusion financière, et donc de réduire d'augmenter le taux de bancarisation en Afrique. Donc on espère pouvoir avoir des résultats positifs, mais on pourra les constater que dans les prochaines années, parce que, en tout cas en Afrique de l'Ouest, la finance islamique est en train de se développer, même si elle existe depuis longtemps, mais avec la nouvelle réglementation, elle vient juste de véritablement dire « je suis là, j'existe », et donc maintenant, il faut que les acteurs se multiplient. Merci à toutes et à tous. Farouk, Evans, do you want to answer to any other question, or we can conclude this webinar?
Thank you, Bubaka. And I don't think, in the interest of time and for our dear participants who have attended, it might not be prudent to answer any question at this point in time. But what we could do is we'll look at the questions that have been posted, okay, and we'll answer them, bilaterally. Okay. So that's the promise we can provide.
Okay. Thank you very much, Evans. Thank you very much, Farouk. Thank you to FSDA one more time and to UK Aid. Merci à FSDA pour ce webinaire. Merci à IFAAS. Thanks to IFAAS for this initiative as well. Thank you to one more time to FSDA, to Angela, and to all the Evans and FSDA teams. Merci à FSDA, merci à IFAAS pour ce webinaire. Merci à toutes et à tous pour votre participation. N'hésitez pas à télécharger. Do not hesitate to download the Islamic Finance toolkit, which is available in French and in English. La boîte à outils de la finance islamique, n'hésitez pas à la télécharger. Elle est disponible en anglais et en français. On verra aussi plus tard avec FSDA si on peut vous partager la vidéo. Maybe we'll try to to share with the audience the replay of this webinar. Thank you to all, and bye-bye, and see you another time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Evans.
Thank you, Bubakar. Thank you, Evans. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.